President Rouhani there, and you heard his voice through an interpreter. Now with me here in the studio is Darren Ennis, who was the former advisor to the EU's foreign policy chief, Cathy Ashton. He now works as a consultant in the Middle East. Darren, you were actually involved in some of those negotiations involving Iran when you were with Baroness Ashton. So do you sense that there is now an appetite for some kind of momentum agreement?
Well, I think the appetite has always been there, certainly from the side of the P5+1 and certainly from Cathy Ashton's side.
Just remind people, that's a permanent member.
Permanent members of the
and
Germany, yeah, or sometimes called the E3+3, whichever side of the Atlantic you're on. But yeah, and certainly there's been an appetite from Cathy Ashton. She certainly persevered with this. But I think we have been taken to the brink on many previous occasions. I think the difference now is that, in my view, the conditions and the ingredients are there to certainly at least find some way forward. I think first and foremost, the Iranians are certainly at the table in a serious way because the sanctions are beginning to bite. I think the geopolitical situation and volatile situation in the wider region will play into that because of we've had the Arab Spring, we've got the issue in Syria. The Iranians do not want that on their doorstep. They certainly don't want it in their own country. And we've got moderates at the table. And then on the E3+...
Well, let's just hang on. My goodness, you're rolling all these off together, aren't you? Let's just pick up on the sanctions. So the sanctions, which, as you say, have been biting in Iran. Do you think that was a very key element in pushing the Iranians to the table? And why? Because they're really having quite an effect? It
is, because ultimately the Arab Spring, itself, including Syria, was a middle-class revolution in terms of, people having money in their pockets and the conditions within the country. Those sanctions are biting in Iran. So the last thing that the Iranian regime wants is people on the streets of Iran because they have no money in their pockets or the conditions are bad. So they're reacting to that. That's why they've become more moderate and that's why they're at the table.
And so does that suggest then that the Iranians want a decision fairly quickly? We've already heard the Iranians say, look, we want something in 6 months' time. I mean, are they saying we want them lifted in 6 months' time? And if so, what do they give in return?
The Iranians have always wanted sanctions lifted yesterday. That's clear. What will happen now is that we will have further talks. It's about the devil will be in the detail. On the one hand, the Iranians will continue. They want sanctions lifted. On the other side, the P5+1 will want to see the enrichment reduced below 20% and, of course, the closure of the nuclear plant.
Which comes first?
I think it has to be a twin-track approach. I think the IAEA inspection will actually be the key. What level of inspection will the IAEA get in Iran? Because you can reduce the enrichment, but of course the skeptics say there could be enriched uranium elsewhere in Iran. So you can have a political agreement and a political consensus, but ultimately it will be the IAEA inspection will be...
That have to verify it's taking place on the ground. And then you're about to say it's also in the interest of the international community, the P5+1, to see some kind of agreement.
We're in a different position now. Hillary Clinton, who is potentially running to become the next president of the US, was hamstrung in some way with the Israeli lobby in the US. John Kerry is not hamstrung by that. Obama is in his in a term where he doesn't have anything to lose. He's not running again.
He wants a legacy.
Yes, but also there is renewed. Your reporter there talked about the US-Russian relationship that is building now. So John Kerry and Sergei Lavrov have a good understanding. You've seen it with Syria. And I think it's the same behind closed doors when it comes to Iran. And I think that, the ingredients, I think, are there, certainly to move the issue forward. The problem is, or the question will be, will Iran be serious enough, or are they kicking the ball just further down the field?
All right, Darren Ennis, former advisor to the Foreign Policy EU Chief, Foreign Policy, Cathy Ashton, thanks very much indeed.